our session. Welcome to Renewable Energy India 2024. As we all know, Renewable Energy India is recognized as Asia's leading B2B expo, and it's aiming to provide a platform to domestic and international manufacturers, traders, buyers, and professionals, and also the thinkers from across the renewable domain. This is the 17th edition of REI, and as mentioned in the inaugural session also, that REI 2024 is a melting point that brings in the opportunity to discuss every little elements of renewable energies with the thought of progression and connecting with every nuances of renewable energy. We once again welcome you all to this session. Our session is on CNI Open Access Market Trends in India. The session has been powered by JMK Research, and the talking points for the session would be market size and latest trends, green open access rules adoption status, state and central level regulatory and uncertainties, ISTS OA market challenges, RTC consumer market in open access, and green energy demand in energy intensive industries. With those words, may I request the panelists to kindly join us onto the stage. A quick reminder regarding our electronic gadgets, which I request you to keep it on a silent mode. And this session is being recorded and it's also being live telecasted for all our members who are in and around the exhibition area and elsewhere also. May I request the moderator of the session to kindly join us onto the stage, inviting Senior Consultant, JMK Research and Analytics, Mr. Prabhakar. Warm welcome, good morning. And may I also invite our speakers of the session to kindly join us onto the stage, inviting on stage Southeast Asia Lead Energy Cargill, Mr. Ashish Maheshwari. Warm welcome to you, sir. Good morning. Inviting on stage President Avada Group, Prashant Chaubey. Mr. Prashant Chaubey is also a speaker in the other session. He's going to join us in a few moments from now. And may I now invite co-founder and managing director, Prozeal Green Energy Limited, Mr. Shobhit Roy. He was supposed to join. He's not joining us right now. He's caught up at some very urgent engagement. We are very honored to have with us Head CNI Business Fourth Partner Energy, Mr. Jay Vaghela. Good morning and very warm welcome to you. May I also invite on stage Chief Business Officer, Raise Power Infra, Mr. Vaibhav Rungta. I'm inviting Mr. Vaibhav Rungta, and I think he's going to join us in a few moments from now. Ladies and gentlemen, this session was supposed to be also moderated by Ms. Jyoti Gulia, the founder of JMK Research and Analytics. But for some very urgent engagement, she has not been able to make it for this session. She sent her best wishes and good regards to the entire REI, essentially to this session on CNI Open Access Market Trends in India. With those words, may I request our moderator, Mr. Prabhakar, to kindly take over.
Thank you, Sushmita. I think that was a very warm introduction to all of us. So a couple of our panelists will be joining us shortly. Until then, we can begin the session. First, I would like to thank REI for having JMK here and for having the panelists here for this lively and very important discussion on open access market that we are going to have. So first, like to begin the session, we can start. My first question would be to you, Jay. So what are the major trends in open access market that you are seeing right now? Like what kind of evolution has the market seen in, let's say, in past couple of years?
Right. So, morning everyone. Thank you so much for having Fourth Partner on this dais. We have been seeing the CNI market evolve over the last 3 to 4 years. In fact, it was about 2018 when the CNI open access actually came into the mainframe, when Karnataka government allowed full waiver of CS, CSS and AS. From there on, the developer community kind of picked it up and they started proliferating this CNI open access in the other states, which also had stable regulations, as well as the tariff of the CNI customers was such that the landed cost of open access power gave them enough savings. So then the market moved to UP, moved to Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, and very recently in Gujarat also, there's a pickup in the wind-solar hybrid. Karnataka definitely happens to be one of the best states to work for CNI open access. So if you really see in the last few years, the movement has been one, the CNI industry started opening up, adopting open access in more states rather than being limited only to Karnataka. Uh, Slowly, the demand from the industry moved from plain vanilla solar, vanilla wind to a more wind solar hybrid. So they wanted more and more replacement of renewable energy, like replacement of their conventional energy. So Tamil Nadu, Karnataka normally had only wind, and Maharashtra and UP had only solar. So now the customers are demanding, why can't you all give me more wind solar hybrid? As we saw in last couple of years, wind solar hybrid picking up, the third wave which has happened now is ISTS. As the government of India took a very proactive measure and very encouraging measure for ISTS to make, kind of get adopted, uh, more and more companies like even our organization has moved into the supplying of renewable energy through ISTS projects. So this is the third, and I think the next wave what we will see is integrating the energy storage. So this would actually lead to a complete evolution of the CNI adoption of renewable energy, and they can be as close as possible to becoming RE100, or I would say replacing most of their conventional energy which they are currently drawing from the DISCOM by renewable energy. And the last bit I would say would be through the virtual power plants, which is either they go for IREX or they just do a contract only for the green component. So this is what I would like to give you all an overview of the CNI open access market.
So building upon that, like I think one point, I agree with all of them. Like the one point that we all have seen that in June 2022, the green open access rules were issued by Ministry of Power, and they were said to be a game changer. Like maybe you can highlight what sort of adoption it has seen in states, how the states have adopted it. Are there any differences in how they have adopted it, and what's on ground you are seeing in terms of the rules that
Absolutely.
the market has changed.
So yeah, so June 2022 was one more proactive measure, I would say. In fact, each one of us in the sector was pretty much surprised on the positive side that the government on its own, that's the central government Ministry of Power, actually reduced the threshold from 1 megawatt to 100 kilowatt, making this open access available to a large chunk of retail and SME customers who were earlier being prevented to access this cheaper power from the open access because of the load limitation, right? And it was kind of an arbitrary number. Although in the Electricity Act in 2005 itself, it was mentioned that they were starting from 1 megawatt and were likely to reduce it progressively. But obviously, no state was kind of taking that, action proactively. But MOP kind of surprised us, and it has been now close to 2 years. 14 states have adopted this green energy open access, and I believe there is some amount of implementation in the larger states. So, for example, Tamil Nadu, even before the green energy open access, customers with less than 1 megawatt could actually take green energy power through open access. Now we are seeing a good amount of movement happening in Maharashtra, Karnataka, as well as in Gujarat. Uh, I think the good point, I would say, there are positives and negatives both of this green energy open access. One, obviously, in our country, we know power is a concurrent subject. So it starts from the center, but the states, obviously, there is some inertia to adopt it wholeheartedly. And we all know that, the CNI industry, if they start moving to the, private developers, the discoms get impacted because of the cross subsidy issue. Having said that, it is very natural, and if the markets are left on its own, the most efficient power will find its way to the consumer, right? So it is bound to happen. The only thing is the time taken by the states to kind of adopt it and make it like applicable for all in their own state. Another 6 months time, I believe there will be movement on green energy open action adoption on ground level. If I were to say you the positives about this is that it has given a standard framework now for the entire country. So we all know what are the open access charges that can be levied when you go for green energy open access. Unlike Previously, the states used to come up with the fancy charges, and then there used to be litigation. It used to go up till 80 or Supreme Court to decide that what kind of charges will be levied or how it will be calculated. At least with green energy open access, there is a clarity. So the CNI customer as well as the developer community and the financing community all have a visibility that this is how the markets will run in the short term. Yeah. Uh, However, the other side of green energy open access is like, for example, there were states like Tamil Nadu who were giving you banking for the whole year. Now it will be restricted to 30 days. So obviously there will be, the wind especially requires a larger banking period as compared to solar. Solar you can do away 1 month banking. The next thing what happened is there were states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, who were charging only 2% banking charge. But now with this green energy open access, they will also go to 8% banking charge. So the landed cost will have an impact. But I still feel it is a good thing because at upfront you know what is the saving going to be and what are the rules going to be, rather than having a surprise every year, every tariff order. Then you are, so it becomes difficult to get into a long-term contract from all stakeholder perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you rightly pointed out that regulatory clarity is the most important outcome of these rules. One point I would like to ask you regarding the rules is that have you seen any on-ground demand of sub 1 megawatt systems? Like the rules decreased eligibility to 100 kilowatts. So are you seeing any demand
Absolutely, yes.
and
We are.
any projects being implemented?
At the moment, I will not be able to kind of publicize the project, but we will be executing one very soon. Okay, there is a contract already on ground. We have signed up, and it is under the regulatory approval process. So once goes live, because the other party is also bound by certain rules. Being a listed company, we cannot tell you the name of the project, but it will be like a large project which will go live in the green energy open access very soon.
Sure, understood. That's good to hear. So, my next question is to you, Ashish. So, Cargill is one of the leading food FMCG manufacturer in India. So, in terms of you represent the consumer side of things in this whole discussion that we are having. So, from your perspective, like what kind of challenges does energy intensive industries face while they try to decarbonize? What sort of options do they have? And you can maybe talk about the Cargill perspective there, and you can touch upon other industries, like what sort of challenges are they facing, and how this open access rules and adoption of and their adoption by states is impacting your long term planning.
So thanks, Prabhakar. From Cargill's perspective, if I talk about how the journey has been, I mean, what Jay has just mentioned, like 4 or 5 years back, it was new to the CNI segment, and Karnataka was the first state, and I would say proudly that Cargill actually went into the same time and actually moved into you can say having a contract in place, which not only solar but also wind. So it was not a co-located wind and solar, but yes, it was a wind and solar put together, and which are complementary to each other. So we got and it's the project initially was targeted to replace 51% of our grid power, and now with variety of phases coming into that same site in Karnataka, we actually now over 90% of our power is green. So, and that too all is coming through open access, and so that's, I would say, the adoption is there. But yes, the state's policies also really matter, and they also give lot of support if the policies are towards customer friendly and making it a bit more open to the consumers. Now we also have very similar kind of project in Maharashtra also, where we saw a lot of challenges initially, and I mean, we kind of evaluated. We have plants. We have 12 sites across India, and covering Haryana, Punjab, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra. These are the major states where we have our factories and footprints. So when we evaluated, I mean, it was a gamut of variety of policies which are changing every now and then, and every state was having their own set of understanding, as Jay just mentioned, power is a state subject. So now, if some state is giving, say, they are allowing on-site solar, which is a normally seen as a very, you can say, quick win or a very low-hanging fruit. But that also, when we talk about CNI customers, especially large corporates, they also want to see, I mean, what kind of regulatory hurdles it's going to face. So the decision making for that, even for a smaller sized rooftop, also could not be done. I mean, that's what we faced in multiple states because of the policies. And of late, we have completed two projects, on-site projects in Andhra, which also seen, similar challenges. Wherein I can cite you one example, wherein one was the regulations was towards, okay, you can go to up to a cap of 1 megawatt of rooftop capacity, but the local, the local the discom team, they had some idea that, okay, government may come with some lower, they have reduced now. I think now the limit is, upper limit is 500 kilowatt only. So they were having some idea, and they were actually kind of delaying the approvals. And once that project got approved, even for 1 megawatt, later on they will multiple activities in terms the local discoms try to delay. I mean, whether, internal references of their letters, like, okay, you cannot have a third party PPA. I mean, you can only have a capex kind of a arrangement for the rooftop, and which is nowhere written. I mean, this was something which came as a surprise. And when we're talking about net metering in that, state. So similarly, I mean, there are multiple other areas like in Maharashtra, very small pieces, but the government, the discom teams, they come up with some or other, reasons and procedural pieces which comes in, kind of delaying the overall thing. But anyways, I mean, there is a lot of progress. All the states are now, mostly states are understanding the fact that, there is a central piece which is there, and the government's commitment towards, the central government's commitment towards moving towards greener energy is vast. I mean, they are really pushing, and there are reasons for the discoms not so supportive. I mean, they have their own, pie of challenges which actually restrictive pieces for the customers. But yes, as we are discussing that the new policy, the GOA policy, which actually taking the threshold limits of qualifying criteria of 1 megawatt to 100 kilowatt, I think more and more CNI customers can join that, and the base, which it can really increase the base. Now the important piece will be how fast the adoption in different states will be there. I mean, again, the same thing. The discoms are and the teams are really either not very clear, or they are trying to be not clear on this subject. And there are, procedural pieces which they comes up and with the challenges. A very recent example I can quote is in Gujarat, wherein they were talking about banking norms, which were actually the interpretations were actually different from what is written in the law by the discom teams. And every developer actually reaching out to discoms seeking clarity, in the interpretations of those banking norms, which was, I mean, sometimes frustrating for the developers as well as the customers, like CNI customers, and which actually gives a very, I would say, a risky proposition when we are talking about decisions making internally. It actually really makes it difficult to, whether we are talking about long-term contracts, 20-25 years long-term horizon contracts, and there is a regulatory uncertainty which comes in. So those are some of the areas I can say, in terms of as Cargill or as a consumer we face.
Hi. Thanks for this. See, according to us, so we have done a lot of, in RAISE, we have done a lot of CNI projects and including land, connectivity, etc. So what we have seen in our experience, okay, in the past, Karnataka was the leading state for open access, still is, right? Then there is Maharashtra, which has been very favorable and very CNI, this Open Access Pro state with with policies which are to comfort or to give to the developers, they give favors. And the other is UP, right? UP is also a state where we are seeing a lot of CNI development. I think in UP, the typical challenges of land, while they really want to do a lot of open access projects, but the availability of land is a bit of a challenge. There's huge land parcel, don't get me wrong, but 1 acre would have probably 10 owners. So it's more complicated to acquire land there. MP is also one state, which has potential and which is looking to do CNI, but I think there the challenge is about the grid cost itself is low. So the tariffs as yet are not so lucrative, for them. Right? Rajasthan is, I think, will be the next big state. Okay, if they really start, developers have already started, looking at Rajasthan and developing projects from a open access perspective with that group captive mechanism. But let's see how that goes. But otherwise, from an EPC perspective, it's big. Right. So, to my mind, these are the few states which has a lot of potential. Gujarat, obviously, right? But I think Gujarat has become too concentrated. A lot of state players itself, which are there. So for for us, we are not really looking at Gujarat now because there are other states which are offering, much more. So that's one. But that is on the group captive side, right? But even on the open access from an EPC perspective, right? There are a lot of CNI customers, who would be interested in putting in their own money and owning the plant, right? Because they could be MSMEs who are not getting the bank financing, right? Primarily, those are the customers, but they have the funds to put out the plant themselves, or they would not have the credit rating to get the PPS. That's the bigger challenge. So I think for them, specifically in Maharashtra, okay, there is a play, with solar, plus a storage system, because the tariffs are very high. Especially commercial tariffs, they're upwards of 10, 12 rupees. For them, a solar plus storage system will also make a lot of sense if part of their peak hour consumption is taken care of. So I think it's opening up. It's every state is looking at new options. These are the few states, to my mind, which are leading in the CNI space.
It's really interesting to hear all the development that is happening in the states, especially the Maharashtra perspective. I hope, and we all hope, that other states also become favorable as we go on. So my next question is to you, Prashant. So what market size, what is the current open access market size that you are seeing in India? And how it is going to evolve, let's say, in the next 5 years? Jay talked about it. Let's say maybe you can touch upon the major trends that you are seeing and how they will develop.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I think CNI has an important role to play in this segment. The reason comes from a fundamental itself, because if you really want to become a self-reliant nation, there have been a talk that your product, your manufacturing capabilities, your exports should be competitive. And fundamentally, the industries, including SMEs now, if they really want to become competitive, the tariff structure is inverted in India. For some of the industries, the cost of electricity as a raw material would be like the 50% of their cost, right? CNI in our structure, tariff structure from agriculture, domestic, it comes at the top, right? And most of the tariffs prevailing for industrial in the upward of 7, 8 rupees, 9 rupees, and for commercial 10, 11, 12 rupees, forget about the peak, right? So one, sustainability would be needed now. The way entire paradigm for a climate is there. There is now requirement for SBTi, for scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, which not only the cost of your electricity, which is important, but all other important dimensions of decarbonization mapped to your product, which are important. So sustainability will play a major important role going forward. A lot of other developments which are taking place across the planet will impact this now. CBAM is going to impact steel, aluminum, and other industries like anything. At this point of a time, if you have to comply with the CBAM regulation at the same time becoming competitive so that your product can be sold in Europe and other markets, then your products have to be very, very competitive. And that's where open access play a very important role here. In terms of the construct now, initially solar was playing an important role, but going forward, I think the requirement to come closer to 70, 80 and 90% of your offset of your renewable requirement. So developers are also playing that important role now for this alignment. Solar, wind solar hybrid, the combination of solar plus storage, as you said, it's a fantastic solution. And you have an ample amount of solar in the day. I was in another session where this was a major topic itself, and so much of a variable renewable energy coming into the system and how to go about it and dealing it. So I think these will play an important role. The way more enforcement of RPOs and ESOs will done, they will be there. The more RPO compliance come, the more renewable power will get deployed. So that will play another important role going forward in this entire segment. The way the state plays around with their regulatory policies, open access is there since 2003, but it took a lot more time to really make it open, right? There have been a lot of challenges, we understand, right? There have been challenges from the DISCOM perspective also. At the end of the day, there are the conflict of interest actually, to be very blunt about it, because eventually you are taking good customers of the DISCOMs and there are going to be resistance about it. But eventually if you look at the overall nation building, right? At the end of the day, it's time for distribution utilities to be as competitive, right? There are distribution utilities who are offering green tariffs now with certain premium. Green energy open access rules have come like a major change. It's a paradigm shift now, reducing 1 MVA to 100 kilowatt for your consumer. You can segregate them. That will again. So these are all will play a more important role in defining the sector. This point of a time, the 14-15 gigawatt is what should be the market, right? Because eventually even I compliment JMK because lot of information about what's the actual size of open access comes from your publication only. Because as compared to other government tender where the information is publicly available, for open access it takes much longer time for this information to come into the public domain. So that will again be an important. And CNI itself, industry itself consume a very humongous amount, more than 50-55% of the data to be correct in terms of energy. But what is the renewable penetration? That has to be done. Our own national target of reducing about 45% of our carbon intensity pre-2005 level by 2030. This cannot be done unless you bring industry into larger part of it. One, make their product competitive, have them competitive electricity. There are solutions available. The developers are ready to make those, tailor-made those solutions for the requirement. Grid is a challenge to an extent now with the ISTS waivers gone by June 2025 next year. Again, the access to the ISTS frameworks and taking this power will become a challenge going forward. Another important aspect would be the major green hydrogen, green ammonia project. We are setting up green ammonia project in Odisha, 0.5 MTPA. With this, 125 gigawatt of renewable electricity is to come into the grid. In terms of happening already. So I think these are all major trend, but even a 20% of our decarbonization is out by the corporates. The market would be like, to my mind, like 100 gigawatt of a market by 2030. It's a humongous opportunity. It's not only the cost of a power which is important, it is something which is needed for the nation building at this point of a time. And regulatories will also have to align over a period. There has been a fantastic push which is coming from federal government, central government on this part. Some of our states comes with certain thing which creates a doubt. For example, recently Tamil Nadu Tanjatco circular which has come is aligned to everything, but it says that you have to deposit security against what if your project is not a captive project in terms of, right, CSS and additional charges. Now that creates a lot of burden, right? You need to free up that market rather than creating those things. So I think these are all in terms of a summary of what this market looks like. We are a important player. The CNI is a very important for our own portfolio. We have about 25 gigawatt of a portfolio at the moment, and CNI is an important aspect of this portfolio for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. I think you mentioned that the various solutions that are happening and a lot of developments are happening in the market, they have to work together for the entire decarbonization of C&I industry. So just a follow-up question to that, I think you mentioned about it, like green open access rules. They have been in place for 2 years now. What sort of adoption you are seeing it in states on ground, and its impact maybe on how you operate, and what kind of uptake you have seen due to those rules, if you can comment on that.
I think it has increased, but see, the fundamentally electricity is a part of a concurrent list, where center and states are free to make their own regulations. Sometimes this happens when there is an alignment, every state will go and immediately co-opt for that regulation. When the green hydrogen policy came, none of a state has gone for buying that policy because it mentions monthly banking will be given, right? The moment the regulation comes, which looks conducive to your health, then you go and adopt, right? Green energy open access will be there, but again, banking will remain a major issue. There have been a lot of issues revolving on banking, whether it's a 30% of generator which is generating in the state, it should be the cap, or 30% of a consumer side should be the cap, right? Then again, tariff structure of that particular state will play a very important role to it. The accessibility to the grid will be very important role to it. Net metering and other issues which are very important role to it. There are another major trend happening, emerging around Kusum scheme, right, where you are going for solarizing the agriculture sector per se. I mean, agrovoltaics and other thing, they will play an important role for it. So I think a lot of states have come up, a lot of states have already published their green energy open access rules. You are giving an accessibility, that access is very important from this rule point of view. There has been the portal which is there, which gives access to this. I think much more synergy is needed into the system if you really want to bring those. At this point of a time, open access primarily remains in the context of a bilateral arrangement, but you need to really democratize what you are talking about. And then democratization takes time because you have to build this ecosystem, right? Generation, transmission, distribution, capabilities, tariff structure. Virtual PPAs are most of the US offtake, if you see, I have been traveling a lot, is centered around virtual PPAs now. It took a lot more time for India to really have that clarity, even though the regulatory aspect is not there, and most of companies we talk about, they are just waiting, for example, who will sign the first virtual PPA in the country, right? So that kind of a clarity would be needed. They are a fantastic element in terms of promoting decarbonization. Second is around carbon trading itself, right? IREX and all those things, they are very important now. Currently is this REC mechanism. Most of the government contracts or the tenders are for their meeting the DISCOM's RPO compliance requirement. So that, to my mind, carbon trading will emerge like a major force in the country going down. Today only there is an article in terms of Food Corporation of India saying that they will go for selling their carbon credit because they have streamlined, digitalized a lot of their procurement, supply chain, logistics. Phenomenal opportunity over there. Scope 1 to 3 emissions for a lot of companies will open up phenomenal opportunities for carbon trading. So that will again be a part of this larger trend, to my mind.
Thank you. Very insightful points, Prashant. So, Jay, my next question is to you. So, Prashant touched upon some uncertainties, challenges regarding regulations. Maybe you can build upon some state or central level uncertainties in regulations. You can expand on them and elaborate on it further.
So as I mentioned, right, the objectives of the DISCOM versus what is the objective of the central government is not aligned, right? So there will obviously be some friction which will be created by the DISCOM to as much possible delay this loss of revenue. So inherently the tariff structure is such that there is a lot of subsidy which the CNI industry is providing to the residential and agriculture within the tariff. It's not the state subsidy, but within the tariff it's called as cross subsidy, right? Till the time we don't correct this tariff structure, discoms will obviously try and push back this initiative. So I think what the government, the central government is now doing is pushing the rooftop for residential will help the discom kind of balance this out, because if really this 1 crore household gets power from the rooftop, they will be completely off the tariff structure. So that kind of burden will not go on CNI, and then the tariffs of CNI will start dropping, or if not dropping, at least stabilize for a long term, right? Coming back to your question, like what we have seen is obviously like the green energy open access regulations in Maharashtra, if you really see, was adopted about a year back, but the state discom did not release the circular for nearly about 10 to 11 months, till the time some consumer went back to the regulator and pushed, got an order in favor. So it takes amount of time, effort, some kind of challenge we have to do the discom so that they fall or start adopting the regulations of the state. Now, as Prashant also mentioned about, and even I think Ashish touched about it, in Gujarat 30% banking. Now it was pretty clear, like it is 30% minimum. Okay, the base has to be decided whether it was the generator or the discom consumption, but the whole the kind of confusion created around was deliberate. I wouldn't say, I mean, there is a confusion there, so why not play on it and try and delay it in the market, right? So that's the way discoms have been doing it. And I believe regulators and the lawmakers also need to be like coming up, like, seeing this in future and making it clear while drafting the regulation itself to avoid this kind in future. Yeah.
You all were amazing points. So coming back to you, Ashish, you talked about the regulations and how it impacts how you take your decisions as a consumer, CNI consumer. Maybe you can talk about business models. For example, when you look, so you go for rooftop solar or open access, and in that also like wind solar hybrid and storage, maybe you have some plans in the future. So how do you decide which kind of business model to look for while decarbonizing your operations?
Okay, so if you ask me this question maybe 3 years back, I would say, okay, the quick win is probably the rooftop ones, which could be, can be done, more easier manner. But as of now, I mean, as a US based corporate, Cargill is actually now aiming towards more and more, you can say, sustainable way of greenify our electricity usage. So far, what we have as a policy, global policy, which states about 10% reduction of our carbon emissions from our 2017 baseline, and this target is to be achieved by 2025. So we are on track, and I think globally we are around 10.97% of our global operations. We are going to reduce that. But now, what next is that probably the new policy internal to Cargill is under framework, and we will see that new framework and new policy which will be more stringent. So if those targets are higher, so then electricity is one area. I mean, I'm not talking about other areas, because we have much bigger areas also where we are reducing our carbon emissions. So be it, usage of variety of, fuels in our supply chains, in our routine operations in factories. So I'll just focus more on the electricity part, which is a scope 2 emissions globally what we have. So more and more we may not be part of RE100 for in recent coming years, but yes, definitely there will be a much higher focus on how close we can be on RE100. So the more and more, the green electricity usage would be required. So from that perspective, rooftop, which is 5 to 10% of the overall consumption of any particular site, that will not suffice. So we may be requiring more and more, green energy coming from probably from outside. or through open access. So that will drive, I mean, maybe similar companies that will drive the demand for green, electricity. Now, as I think Prashant mentioned about even the utilities are giving the green tariffs. They're offering, some of the states they are putting their premiums and offering green tariffs. So that is one way of doing the green, making your power consumption as close to green by utilizing the green tariffs. But that again is a premium, which company has to agree to and to pay to. Now, there are other options which you just mentioned about, for example, off-site, whether wind or solar through open access, or even going beyond, if because of the regulatory uncertainty the decisions are not, we cannot make a decision to go with a commitment of a 25 years or 20 years agreement or a PPA. We can maybe like think about, okay, why don't we do it virtually? So virtual PPAs will also maybe a next big thing which will be coming. There are a lot of data center centric companies which are now going to opt that, because they are probably part of RE100. They have more bigger commitments. So there are a lot of projects coming up in variety of states which are going for a VPPA. We may see, very soon we may see hearing these VPPAs to be signed off. I mean, these are big, you can say capacities are being blocked for VPPAs. So that will be a new, set which will be coming for companies who are really looking for 100%, green their power intake.
Just a follow-up question to that. So, are you also looking at RTC-based solutions like complete RTC? That has been a talk in the market recently.
So, see, if a company is talking about, say, 100%, right, 100% power, so they will definitely talk about RTC. I mean, round-the-clock power, which should come from the green, source. So, for our kind of, some of the production areas, we may not have a requirement of RTC, certain production, sites. But yes, there are process-driven sites. Definitely, the RTC would be required. So discussions and evaluation and those opportunities are really yet to be done for RTCs. Yes.
Thank you, Ashish. So I think I'll move the discussion towards a new topic within the open access space that is happening right now, that is ISTS. So ISTS, the government came up with GNA regulations, and there has been a push from the government with the transmission waivers and all. So Vaibhav, maybe you can take it up. So what sort of developments you are seeing in this space, the ISTS space, and what sort of challenges, even with all the waivers and all the support from the government, that still needs to be addressed for the market to take off?
So I think the biggest challenge was already mentioned, the alignment between the state and the center, right? That is the biggest challenge. Yes, it was a great boost, those guidelines that the central government came up with, asking the state governments to align themselves. That would have really given, a speeding ticket to this whole CNI open access installations. But unfortunately, that has not happened. We are seeing certain installations happening in Rajasthan, where the power is going to be, supplied to CNIs across the country. That's happening. But I think the biggest challenge again is the alignment. I think that is really required, and that I think our leaders need to figure out how they're going to do it, because what happens is you can take the power to a certain state up to a certain level, but from there what? Then the state regulations come into picture, the state charges will come into picture, right? Whether it's open access, it's group captive or not, what are the charges, what are the losses, how you take the power from to the other. So and what kind of, do you really, like for example in Karnataka, I don't know the answer, but do you need to take a geo there again? while you are paying in Rajasthan the RDF charges because putting the power is going out of Rajasthan. So you're paying that state. Now it's coming to Karnataka. Now you need to take a geo here. That's too expensive. So I think these are the things which really need to align themselves so that it doesn't become too expensive to put up these plants and then it just becomes not viable, for the ultimate consumer. So if you want to add to it.
Yeah, I think one he has already said in terms of a larger alignment. Second, for ISTS, I think the ISTS waivers will play an important role now. First tranche goes out 25 and then 25% in 26, 50% in 27 and 75% in 28. But more than the charges, I think is access to connectivity and evacuation is a major challenge. For an captive ISTS project, 50 megawatt is the minimum connectivity. We have won probably the largest bids this year. As we have almost 18 gigawatt of a secured LOAs and PPAs, and there has been a struggle for a connectivity even for utility player. For ISTS connectivity, either you should have a LOI or a PPA to apply for, or you go for a BG route in terms of a land and you submit, and that creates a lot of challenge for a private developer. Access to ISTS connectivity. Second, most of the current margins are full, so you have to plan either, let's say, for a Fatehgarh 4 or some other which are coming in 27, 28, right? For a C&I to plan for a 3 or 4 years for ISTS seems to be a challenge. So I think that is where a major challenge will come. Evacuation, the renewable projects, whether solar or wind, they get deployed much faster than the evacuation system being put in place. You need to create an alignment between the two, right? If we are today the developer in country for STO base or ISTS base, 10 to 12 months maximum time, including for land acquisition, you can set up a project. But can your transmission line, ISTS transmission line can come in a 12 months period? No. So I think that is something which is there. I think STO based projects are still a viability where within a state you can do, but again banking creates an issue, and that larger mindset has to be kept in mind that at the end of a day, renewable is an intermittent power. It needs to an extent support till the time you have a 100% RTC capability supported by either battery storage or a pumped storage. Developers are also mindful of the fact. We are also setting up a large pumped storage project in UP now where we have got an approval and trying to build and present those solutions where solar, wind and any kind of a storage, right? Or solar plus storage, either pumped storage can give you this capability to give round the clock power. But I think two major challenges will remain in terms of a connectivity which are there. Then land is again a major problem in various stages. So these are the real challenges which you need to overcome in terms of looking at ISTS market from a CNI point of view.
Has introduction of GNA improved the situation in terms of connectivity, or it is largely the same?
It is a procedural aspect, right? So one is the grant of a connectivity, and so it is inbuilt in the system. It is implicit in the system that once you get a GNA, you are getting a connectivity as well, right? So it is a procedural aspect which has been resolved. But point is that central REIAs are coming with 50 gigawatt of annual tender every year. Right? Now you announce a tender, you conduct an bid, LOI issued, whosoever gets an LOI is free. And the 4 criteria which are there is basically the system where there is a margin available or system where there is augmentation in plan in terms of your 18 or 24 months of a PPA delivery, right? Against those 50 gigawatts, already the major rush is there for the system and connectivity. So GNA does not give you access to the connectivity. GNA is about the procedural aspect which has made the thing simpler. When you go for when you need to go for a Con 1, Con 2, Con 3, Con 4, Con 5, Con 6, where you need to give the BGs, how the procedural process flows, it has made a life simpler. But at the same time, major push has to be given for this connectivity. For example, it's beyond 765 kV now, right? You need to think in terms of 800 kV of a DC line, which are, because most of the central bits are also dependent on the major HVDC corridors coming up. And beyond that, even 1600 kV of a HVAC system. That is what is needed if you are looking at bringing 500 gigawatt of RE into the grid in next 3 to 4 years.
Jay, your comments
No, I
on
echo
ISTS?
most of the comments what the panelists have said. In addition to that, I would say it is also the, the awareness at the, at the Transcom and the Discom level at across the country. That is also missing. So we have been facing challenges of getting the NOCs from the Discoms in not on all states, but definitely in certain states where either they are not open to even giving open access within the state. So those states where we want to actually bring in power because STU open access is not available, they are actually becoming a bottleneck for even ISTS. So in addition to what the other panelists have said, this is also one thing which the government will need to push through.
About the waivers specifically, I think we all know that the waivers they will start to reduce from next year. Like I think it's currently at 100% waivers for transmission ISTS, and they will start to reduce. So, is there a need to like delay that timeline, extend it by some way? Like, will that help the market at least in the
I think
short term?
most of the developers have approached the government because of the practical difficulties. Like when they envisaged this, obviously there was some thought process of so much gigawatts of connectivity will be given, but the physical delay in providing that connectivities is becoming a bottleneck for the developers to meet those targets. So obviously most of the players have gone ahead, and let's see how does the government react. There has been no commitment per se, but they are open to at least hearing the feedback from the industry.
I think, see, ISTS charges are 3 to 4%, right? So ISTS losses are anyhow to the account of the consumer. 3 to 4% of the ISTS charges, with a 25% waiver, I think the practical impact on tariff to the tune of 8 to 10 paisa. I think that is something which can still be accommodated into the system. I don't see waiver of a charges become, you support, for example, green hydrogen is being supported till 2030, waiver of ISTS charges. Till the time you really want to set up in a context where there's a proper democratization of a electricity landscape within the country, till the time you need to promote ISTS, because the real advantage has gone in terms of sites where there is more solar radiation available, there is more conducive ecosystem. So Karnataka, Rajasthan, Gujarat, each of them is 15 to 18 gigawatt plus now in terms of RE capacity. But you need to ensure that what about the pharma industries which are there in Himachal and Uttarakhand, because they don't have a space for setting up solar projects. How to make it possible? Or for example, Punjab. Or for example, there is a massive push coming from integrating Northeast more into it, right? More industrial development will happen. Per capita consumption of electricity has to improve. If you have larger, need to become a Viksit Bharat by 2047. These are the fundamentals, right? What will happen that your focus is remain on 5 to 7 states where the suddenly is 100 gigawatt plus. So that democratization requires this ISTS facilitation to happen. One, in terms of charges, because it reduces the cost of the electricity to the consumer, makes it more competitive for them. But at the same time, you need to align your transmission plans, access to electricity, access to ISTS substations as a corporate, right? It is available as for a bidder because they have got an LOI and PPA, but as an entity who want to set up in CNI projects, do you have all the PPA at the day one? Can you do that much of a capex on the day one? Can you go for, if you want to set up 100 megawatt of a project, you want about 500 acres of a land, can you give the 50% of a BG and give a condition that 6 months I'll submit everything? So these kind of a thing will require, but for a larger democratization, ISTS extension will any point of a time will help.
Right. I think we can all take like what we can take from this is that regulatory sort of intervention between and the collaboration between the states and center is the most important thing for ISTS development. Waivers still we can do without it. So let's move the discussion ahead. So MSMEs, we will talk about the smaller industries now. So MSMEs, green open access eligibility limit was reduced to 100 kilowatt. One of the main reasons for inclusion of MSMEs. So Vaibhav, maybe you can take this up. Like regarding this, what sort of uptake in the MSMEs? Like, have you seen any sort of interest, and what are the challenges specific to the MSMEs market? Are they in a conundrum like whether to go for open access or rooftop? Like, what sort of your comments on this?
Okay, so on this one, I'll have limited insight because, as raised, we are not doing PPAs, right? But from what I know, we are not doing CNI PPAs. Rather, we are doing those utility ones. So, but what I understand is, for MSMEs, the problem has been, one was credit rating, right? Because of which they were not getting PPAs. while they could be debt free, their balance sheet would show a healthy, cash balance or bank balances. But still, because of the credit rating alone, our banking system did not allow, the developers to get loan on the PPS. That was a big challenge, right? Then the second challenge which was there was for the MSMEs then to decide whether we want to put up the plant on their own or not. Now, if they want to put up a plant on their own, whether they should put that capital in a non-core asset or just look at expanding their current, manufacturing floor, okay, and let the grid power come, and that's how grow and probably get a credit rating and then go for PPS, right? So I think that was the dilemma that I have been seeing in the MSME space, right? Somewhere I have now seen, these companies have started seeing the benefit of getting green power, right? A lot of them are now have started investing their own money. You see Tamil Nadu, right? You see Rajasthan, right? You see Gujarat, right? They've started investing, owning the plant because they see that the long-term benefit of this low-cost power, okay, will always help them to grow and their bottom lines, right? That is one. Second is, even as developers, if we can give them options, which was first it was only solar and wind, then came hybrid, right? Now we have storage. So like I mentioned earlier, Maharashtra, to my mind, can be the pioneer state for a solar plus battery system for CNI because of the grid tariff which you see there, right? So if that happens, then you solve a peak power tariff problem for the CNI. I think that will really help to grow this. And once CNI and once these MSMEs start becoming self-sufficient, I'm hoping, that the banks would see it that if they can lend to those MSMEs to own the asset, why can't they lend the developer, right, to put up the asset and give them a PP? I mean, it's the same thing, right? They're taking the same risk, right? So I think that's my 2 bits, but I think
Jay, you can maybe
Yeah,
expand on that.
basically, Vaibhav did mention the right point, which is basically having the credit rating. So the banks, because as you know, any project, it is 70-30 ratio, right? The 30% equity has been brought in by the developer. And in fact, if we are going for a captive transaction under open access, 26% of this equity is brought in by the customer themselves, right? So, but the question is, who will fund that 70% debt? Because most of the banks, whether you call it like the foreign banks or Indian banks or private NBFCs, they have still not become very accustomed to do this kind of lending for PPS for SMEs. Mainly because one, obviously the credit rating is there, but second is also the future. Like because these industries do not have like a lot of them, I would say. Few of SMEs would be there for few 10, 20, 15 years, and they have become a value chain for the OEMs. Like for example, in the automobile industry, you will find a lot of SMEs who are part of that chain. But beyond that, if you go, there have been many companies who would be operating for having a history less than 10 years. So it becomes difficult for the lenders also to take a long-term view. So is the market now opening for more short-term PPAs? That could bring in these customers in the mix, and the lenders could also be then become more comfortable in giving short-term loans. So that could also be a kind of a solution to this problem.
Rightly pointed out. I think short-term PPAs we have mentioned a lot of times. So regarding the power markets, the IEX and PXIL. So I would like to hear from anyone of you can take it up. Like what sort of trends are you seeing in terms of power market development, in terms of GTAM, IDAM, what the prices, and what's your outlook, like how it will evolve in the next 2-3 years?
I think GDM and GTAM both markets, they are still in a formative phase. If you look at the overall size of our Indian electricity sector and how much is actually traded is not that much. The penetration will take a time, but building further, these are all an opportunities for the SMEs, right? What he has rightly said, credit rating in finance remain a major problem from a SME's point of view, also from a developer point of view, because not only is the lender who could be skeptical whether it would last 25 years, but the developer itself would be skeptical whether it will last for 25 years. Second would be how to do consolidation, because SMEs will not have 5-10 megawatt of a requirement. It will be somebody would have probably 700 kilowatt, somebody 1.5. Who will consolidate, given there is a complexities of a captive regulation itself, right? Tomorrow, if you onboard 100 customers into your SPV structure, and suppose one of them goes for a toss, then your entire structure goes for a toss, and additional surcharge and cost subsidy surcharge gets levied. So that is again a major regulatory risk. Green energy open access is actually a sort of a boon in terms of all those who really want to get access to it, right? But only thing is that there is a premium there. So whether, and for SMEs, the cost of power is again very important factor. So the more the tariffs become more competitive, right? The discoms become so efficient that they offer the same tariff as the developers are being offered. That is how the real situation will really change for them over a period of a time. And the way the consolidation happens over a period of a time in the market, whether there is some sort of a priority sector lend, and if you want to really make them successful, and how do you really democratize this? That is how all clues are there in this thing. But exchange will play a major important role as more VPPAs come, virtual PPAs come, and that will happen sooner or later. And that where the role of stock exchanges become important, energy exchanges become important. And third would be in the context of, as more and more ISTS related projects they are set up, more and more surplus electricity comes into the system. More and more people try to take example of AI and other digitalization into the system, start taking the best optimization route for a tariff happenings, and where to sell, where not to sell. That's where the again market will play a very important role for these kind of things happen.
Thank you, Prashant. One point, like maybe Jay or Vaibhav can take it up, regarding the virtual PP and all the CFD based projects that we have been hearing for a long time, like 3 or 4 years now, more than that. But still there are no on ground projects that have implemented those. Like, what are the major challenges? Like, why is it not happening? And what needs to be resolved so that it happens?
I'll just take it. Yeah. So basically, in my view, I mean, the CFD structure itself, there is still a confusion. In case actual power delivery happens and there is a dispute, where does it land? So it, as per the Supreme Court judgment, if the actual power delivery is happening, it will be taken up by the CRC. And if the actual power delivery is not happening, then it will be a financial product and will be taken by SEBI. But still, the developer community as well as the lenders are still not very pretty much sure about going about signing such a large contract for CFD. And in case if it doesn't function, finally, who will be held responsible, right? These are all large bets, right, which anybody wouldn't want to take. So till the time there's lack of 100% clarity on this, I don't think so this will go ahead in the format it is. But Indians are absolutely known to do some innovation. So we have seen now contracts where there is no CFD, but there is a virtual power PPA done, right, where the power is already sold to somebody tied up, and only the green attributes are being sold to the foreign companies.
It's interesting. Maybe, okay. So, Ashish, to you, next question. Like, you heard, like you also mentioned about the power markets. So, in your, in Cargill, what sort of, like, are you also taking power for power markets, and do you prefer them more, or you prefer to set up the projects yourself? What sort of decisions that you make?
So we have some you can say sourcing happening on power market exchanges, but that is very limited, and the specific, you can say, objective of that buying is to optimize our costs. So that's not related with with our sustainable goals. So the IEX or any other exchange would, where we are, and that is very small. I mean, because the price fluctuations and the particular TOUs where we were getting this better pricing, so that those only the TOU the time of usage we are getting some power from exchanges. That also comes with some risk in terms of that, because mostly what we do is day ahead market, purchasing. So if there is any local challenge in terms of connectivity or the lines, then the power which we bought yesterday, we will not be able to get it delivered. So those kind of risks we are currently operating, and that's why that those number of total usage of electricity from IEX is very very limited at this point in time. We did that couple of years back in a bigger way, but now it has reduced. And what you just mentioned is like more focus is now how we can get more and more green power or renewable power through open access wherever it is possible. So the states where I just a few minutes back I mentioned that Karnataka, we have now one of the bigger site is actually now having 90%, more than 90% of the green power coming in. Then other states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, and maybe some other states, we will be also getting more and more green power. There will be and like for example, Andhra was not so great state in terms of its policies so far. Hopefully, in coming years, coming months, we will see better and better, you can say, policies coming in, and then we will more focus on how we can adopt and get more, you can say, green power through off-site or open access route.
Understood. I think long-term price viability on power markets is very important for that particular market to grow. Coming to the supply side, after implementation or hard implementation of ALMM from this year, maybe any of the developers can comment on this. Are they seeing what sort of maybe are they facing any issues in terms of procuring supplies, and what is happening on this? Is it impacting ALMM implementation? Is impacting your operations and your expansion plans?
Going forward, actually, ALMM, which is there for the module, and now announcement next year for the cell, that will happen. Globally, the world is looking for China plus one now everywhere. If you look at US, there has been a recent, I think last 3-4 days ago, 301 sanctions, major again tariffs which are there. Anti-dumping has again been initiated now, which is there in the newspaper recently. I think larger, if you really want to go for your larger vision of bringing so much of a RE into the system, like 500 gigawatt, and then you are 100% dependent for your supply chains outside your country, then you are putting energy security of the country for a great risk. And that has been, and the reason is that because simply you can't really compete on those parameters on which China is building the world ecosystem, right? Low access financing, right? I mean, 1%, 2% kind of a financing, and then investing so much at a gigawatt level in terms of creating plug and play, because your political system allows that for you to do that, right? You can simply acquire a larger land, convert a factory, make it into plug and play model, can give you 1 to 2% of a financing. Nobody can match that, right? Whatever we can do, we need to build that capacity over a period of time. I think these will remain, but it's coming from both supply side and demand side. There has been a plethora of PLIs which are coming to promote the manufacturing. It has come initially with the PPAs itself, so as you have this long-term visibility in the mind that yes, that is going to stay. The direction of the policies and the uniformity, it will play a more important role, because the kind of investment needed for this will be to that extent. The challenge remains that module lines are still there, which can meet the demand for a while. Cell will take place over a period of a time. We just started our 1.5 gigawatt of a module line, and we'll be setting up 5 gigawatt of a cell and module line going forward now. But more to do with the fundamental initial at a value chain, which is polysilicon and wafer. That is where the major challenge remains, because of the large capital requirement which is there, large power requirement which is there into this. I think that's where the more and more focus of a government would be needed. But at this point of a time, a reasonable supply of a module will be available, right? There has been an issue related to whether ALMM covers only the government projects or C&I projects also. Most of our developer has reached out because of the bilateral contract, because of the need for the industries and consumer to become the competitive. So that will again have a much of a bearing on that. But I think as far as the kind of capacities which are envisaged for open access there, the module availability will be there, right, at the moment. But you need to complete the entire ecosystem over a period of time if you really want to survive in a global market. So polysilicon, wafer, cell, and everything has to be brought on. Land has to be, land-related reforms have to be there. Financing is a major issue which is to be there. Switchyard connectivity, evacuation has to be there. I think you need to look around the ecosystem if you want to play that game.
So, in my view, like, yes, the availability currently is there, what we require to put up the capacity, but maybe the size of the module, the technology which is available in the foreign market versus what our domestic manufacturers are able to bring it up. There is a gap there, and obviously cost economics, obviously China has a larger economies of scale to play at. These are the two things I think which is impacting the delivery. Like if we can go ahead with a 660 watt peak module versus a 550 watt peak module, the requirement of the land will also come down. The other parameters like the generation efficiency of the foreign modules is much more. So for the same infrastructure, we'll be able to produce more energy, and everything, the losses as well as the charges or the end landed cost to the customer may also be a little better. So these are the impact of ALMM.
Jay, your comments.
So, so this is true that yes, today we have modules available under ALMM. Okay, there's sufficient capacity, compared to the demand that we see today. But I think it's just going to go up, and it's going to go up tremendously, because the way I see it, almost every month there is 4 to 5 gigawatt of utility tenders which are coming out. Right, we are seeing a lot of demand on the CNI space, right, which is going to increase the demand for modules, right? And yes, we are not the technology makers; we are technology takers, right? And I think right now our focus is on building our capacity of manufacturing, right? So it is going to be very difficult for us to couple it with the R&D. With ourselves. So I think, to my mind, for a certain period of time, we are gonna be technology takers, right? But having said that, I think I've seen a lot of interest in these, foreign suppliers, even Chinese companies, to set up manufacturing units in India, right, and bring their technology here, right? So that's happening, right? There is HJT, which from the Korean markets, that you can, they're interested in coming to India and setting up their businesses here, which is happening. In fact, even as at Raise, we have partnered, we have a technological tie-up with a company, and we are in the process of setting up a manufacturing line. We are planning to have a 10 gigawatt of module and 5 gigawatt of cell manufacturing line in the next 3 to 4 years. Probably our first module line is going to come up about a gigawatt in the next 5 to 6 months. So I think every large player, who's been in the industry for a while and who's seen how this industry is going to go, is somewhere looking at having, and every developer is somewhere looking to have his own manufacturing line, because one is like Prashant mentioned, that as a country we need to be self-sufficient. We cannot depend. Even as a developer, as a large developer, you would want to be self-sufficient to ensure that a development is happening at the pace that you want to, and not really over-dependent on other suppliers. Module is the most important component. So I think that's where the landscape is.
Yes, I think there needs to be a very good balance between manufacturing and energy security, as Prashant mentioned. So with that, I would like to open the floor for questions. Any questions from the audience? Can anyone pass the mic to them? You may direct your question to any one of them by stating their name, or you can openly state like which
Thank you.
anyone can answer.
Yeah. My name is Vishal. I'm a researcher at CW. So I think my question is directed to both the developers here. And so do you think that the data architecture in the power sector itself, like all the data that we collect that is available and it is available for any good use, is there a binding constraint towards CNI decarbonization because of lack of some data pipelines? Is there some market intelligence which cannot be generated by an RE developer as to where I should put on a plant? How do I find the right off-taker for my green open access? So I just want to understand from your perspective, do you feel data and the lack of availability of it thereof in itself could be a challenge or not? Yeah. Thank you.
The answer is both yes and no to an extent. I think the entire data architecture in terms of availability of a site, solar is not much of a challenge now in terms of most of the developers having their own systems like PV-Syst, which is there for the solar radiation or even for the wind, or a software like Plexos, which are used for building the entire construct for the tender is the way it is there. Wind to an extent, yes, because you are dependent on some of the data of the Neve, etc. for the wind sites. That is again a major challenge. So there are elements. One is that when you really want to go and set up a project, one is that the entire database related to the regulatory, that is more important, right? How a DISCOM of that particular state is working is more important. How the direction of a regulations is happening in this state is more important before you come to the physical aspect of the site selection and the land. So I think elementary ecosystem is a very important role to play to an extent. I think most of the developer have that access, whether internal or dependent on something. There is no database like which gives you one point access to anything. If you go to US, I think a lot of developers there will have that data platform which can give you a instant access into that. But if that comes, somebody takes a lead to work on that, especially with AI playing more and more role, digitalization playing more and more role, exchange related power cell playing more and more role. I think the integration of the data would be important. Some of our fantastic data inputs from a government site is there, for example, Pravaha, which gives you the entire input, or Prapti portal, which gives you access to where the discounts payable are due, who is due. So I think more and more, MNRE has itself a very good database which is there in terms of that. But I think some point of a time that integration, both for the physical aspect of a project and regulatory aspect, if it can come, would be like a great thing.
Yeah, so I don't think so. There is an impediment because of lack of data. I mean, it just hampers a little bit of speed, I believe. That's it. But today, if you see, the market is really supply constrained, right? So there is no, because of lack of this information, it's not that the developers are losing a lot of business per se. So therefore, the need is not there so much that somebody has gone ahead and made this kind of data available or a business model around selling this data till now. So yeah.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Harsh Sethi from Trinano Technologies. We work with NCPRE and IIT Bombay. So my question is to both developers and makers of solar panels. Looking at the renewable energy targets India has, I think solar plays a big role. So what is the technology advancement you are looking for in terms of improvement of the power output, reduction in operating costs like soiling and all, and third is the degradation. Because ultimately, sooner or later, we will compete with other brands who are coming from in the international markets from Southeast Asia, Turkey, or US. So what's your take on that? Thank you.
I think as a module developer, there has been a trend is moving away from PERC, mono PERC to TOPCon now, our own factory which we have set up as a TOPCon. Going forward, I think that's where, as I was mentioning, this one important, thank you brought that element. Technology obsolescence is again a major challenge why manufacturing could not take place and why the China it could done, because there's been a lot of investment happening in R&D, which we have not done per se. Some of our national missions like green hydrogen, they have certain 400 crores is there for the R&D. But that's something which this country needs to do, right? Because by the time you set up your 400, I'm just giving example, 400 kilowatt factory for a module size, and in next 12 months you set up a factory, by that time your 400 kilowatt is redundant. What would you do with that investment, right? and more it will happen, and perovskite will play a more important role now. I think I hear that they have achieved around 26-27% of cell efficiency through that. So it will happen over a period of time. Currently, most of Indian manufacturers are looking at TOPCon at this point of a time. But yes, one has to be, and the good idea is that over a period of time, both this technology, TOPCon and other, the interchangeability element is not much, which creates an hurdle in terms of opting or changing a technology. So that is how, but R&D will remain a major role to play, and you rightly said about so much of a capacity coming into the system. I think over a period of time, our entire manufacturing ecosystem has to become not only module, but other glass, aluminum frame, back seat, EVA. I think this entire ecosystem has to be built. You can't be dependent even for your nut bolt on China. And that's how this country has to really look forward to.
Just want to add to that. So, see, as the journey that we have seen, okay, in India. So yes, earlier we had started with solar, wind, and we were looking to develop capacity, increase our capacity, the mix of green energy, in our supply. So that we have achieved, right? So now we have got scale, right? We have got the size, right? And we are there. Now there's another problem that we have right now, which is our grid stability, optimizing the grid utilization, right? And now, and for that, what we really need is the storage systems, right? So to my mind, yes, continue the R&D, obviously improve the panels, improve generation, improve, reduce degradation, yes. But I think more efficiency is required in the storage systems. We need to reduce the storage cost, right? Once that happens, once we have stabilized the grid, I think that is when probably a next level of innovation comes, improvement comes in the modules, etc. is fine. But I think right now our more important need is the battery systems, which is again, India is a technology taker. Again, here also we are not too much into R&D. So, but then what we can do is, while we delayed, our manufacturing setup for modules and cells, right? What we can do is that, set up our battery manufacturing systems now itself, right? So the supply capacities that we have in the storage systems is up to the mark by the time we really need them, right? So I think there are a lot of developers who are looking at setting up their manufacturing units. We are setting up battery manufacturing units, trying to get to about 5 gigawatt-hour manufacturing capacities by the next 3 to 4 years. So I think that is the next level of R&D that I would like to see in the industry for the next few years.
I think to add to it, I think we have learned our lesson now. It took us almost 10 years when the solar started and first solar manufacturing PLI to come. Today we understand that within a year of green hydrogen mission coming into the play, there is a PLI for electrolyzer, there is a PLI for advanced cell chemistry, for battery storage. I think we are learning and fine-tuning into the game as a country, and I think we'll reap good advantage over a period of time. Yeah.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sumit Bhatia, and I represent ARS Steels. We are manufacturer of steel TMT rebars, having our production facility at Chennai. And at present, we are consuming almost 32% of our electricity consumption from renewable power. And by end of this year, we are targeting around 90% of renewable power of our consumption from renewable power. We have already entered into long-term power purchase agreement with the top developers. We are working with Continuum, Cleantech Solar, and Torrent Power. Recently entered into a 55 megawatt PPA with Torrent Power. So my question is that, like, we are working to adopt renewable energy into our system to become green. We are very proud that we have the lowest carbon footprint in the industry today in India. We are 3 times lower than Jindal and Tata's. And by next year, I am working to becoming a carbon neutral steel manufacturer. I will be the first one in the industry, hopefully. We are working on that. Challenge is again the eccentric behavior of the DISCOM. For example, in Tamil Nadu, the generation during the solar hours, we can offset during the night hours as well. So recently there has been a petition filed by DISCOM to restrict the solar consumption against the solar generation. So with that, we cannot, move towards the goal of becoming 85%, 95% renewable energy. So what option we have for that?
First of all, congratulations for all your endeavors. I think you are doing great things. Keep doing those great things. It is
Thank you very
required. So issue is that you need to learn to coexist with the discoms, right? You need to actually get into their shoes and understand their problem as well. So they are managing supply for the entire state per se. When there was a possibility when the banking came at that point of a time, and it was there across, you can even, initial banking you could have used during the peak time also. Today, whatever is a semblance of banking is available is in form of a monthly settlement available where you can offset against off-peak hours only, right? Over a period of time, that will get restricted more so. There is no banking anywhere in the system for the peak. We understand because peak power is expensive. I think the solution does not lie with what the DISCOM, we need to anticipate what the DISCOM will do because we understand how this entire transition is unfolding, how this grid behavior is unfolding, how the challenge for the internal system management is unfolding. Even in that system, we as a developer want to offer you a solution, we need to anticipate how it will happen, right? Best solution would be, as I think Vaibhav has also said, that how you bring in storage component complementing with solar and try to have less and less dependence on DISCOM feed energy to you. The moment and the country is surging ahead to do that, I think at a utility level, if you look at most of the tenders coming, they are the FDRE, firm and dispatchable tender. Over a period of time, it will have to be done that entire power to be supplied had to be dispatchable. You need to align with the requirement of a DISCOM because they are at the last mile supplying to industries, agriculture, residential, everything. So I think you need to bring in that from a developer and a consumer perspective. We need to understand their challenges, whatever is available within the system to use it best, but to integrate and constantly innovate and reiterate, reinvigorate your system itself, where solar complemented by either wind or more of the storage can give you more and more solutions. So I think that is how they are, because at the end of a day, if you look at regulatory assets have become a major problem now. There have been no tariff revision because of, we understand because of the political reasons. So that will remain, that is a challenge, but you need to really smartly outcome those challenges and try to go. But what you are doing is really great, so compliment to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We can have one last question.
I was just adding to it. What Prashant said is, yes, we need to understand the discoms, right? I mean, even they are trying, to keep up, with this whole growth of renewable energy, etc., with the influx of developers selling directly to CNI consumers, setting up their own plants, So suddenly there's a lot of competition for them, yes, but even they are trying to, play toe-to-toe with us, right? So, for example, yes, they would want, there are a lot of tenders, utility tenders, which are coming with solar plus battery systems or an FDRE system, right? Where we are required to use storage and supply a certain amount of power during the peak hours, right? There was, just to give an example, one tender was where we had to supply power peak hours only in the evening, right? Now that tender, that PSA to be signed is facing an issue because typically discoms need morning and evening. Right. So there is a very peculiar problem. It's not just whether financially they want to do it or not. It's also about the grid stability. At what point they have a lot of power supply, right? Which they want to use. They have to use, right? Otherwise the power is getting wasted, right? So I think that is where it comes. It's not always discom's fault, right? It's just that we need to learn to coexist.
I think a lot of things will happen. See, that's a problem with the solar. It will remain, and we also over a period of time will see that infamous duck curve, right? When during daytime you have so much of a plenty of solar available, but you need to really look in play smartly. Let's say, for example, electrolyzer. They are a flexible load. They can absorb a lot of power. Or can you shift the loads? Instead of agriculture being a peak load consumer during the evening, can we shift the load during the daytime? Can you probably shift some of the office timings, right? That is how you need to align with this flexibility in a load. And as the problem becomes more pronounced, I think there will be a solution coming from the behavioral change itself.
So, with regards to battery storage, like you're all prominent developers, have you installed such kind of system for any CI customer? And if yes, what could be the range we can expect with regards to the tariff which can be offered from battery?
After this, we can have an offline conversation on this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would like to end the session here and invite Shushmita to take over.
Much. Thank you so much, Mr. Prabhakar. Thank you so much, panelists, for a very informative session. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for our panelists, for them to be taking out some time and making this discussion a very interactive session. Thank you, everyone, for participating so well. Like mentioned, due to the paucity of the time, we can't take interjections and comments at the moment, but we can definitely take them around the networking breaks. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the organizing team members in Informa Markets, we would like to present mementos to all our panelists. May I request our honorable moderator to kindly present mementos to our speakers. Presenting a memento to Mr. Ashish Maheshwari, requesting Mr. Prabhakar to kindly present the memento. May we present a memento to Mr. Jay Vaghela. We now thank Mr. Prashant Chaubey. May we now present a memento to Mr. Vaibhav Rumta. And a huge round of applause for our moderator of the session for a wonderful session, Mr. Prabhakar. And on behalf of Informa, may I present a memento to Mr. Prabhakar.